of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. 3, 2, 1. Now live from the Devil Radio Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning. Welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics. Please allow me to introduce myself. Here is your host, Mike Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. It is a Throwback Thursday edition. Fancy Brian, how long has it been since you and I were on the radio together?
At least 2 weeks.
Like 2 weeks.
At least 2 weeks. And 20 pounds ago.
Wow.
I lost 20 pounds.
Oh, I thought you thought I had lost weight. I'm thinking, absolutely not, sir.
You might have. I have no idea. I don't even know what day it is.
Are you sure you should be back at work?
No, but I need to be. So here we are.
That was a pre-existing condition, though.
That's true. That's true.
You know, I've got a clock with the day on it. Last thing I look at, just in case.
That's the most inaccurate clock I have ever seen in my entire life.
Well, it's usually correct at least the day of the week. Happy Thursday, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Lots of big breaking news as we go on the air today. U.S. Supreme Court ruled. They blocked the Biden vaccine mandates for big business, but it's okay for healthcare.
Okay.
Something of an oxymoronic ruling, just my opinion. Just my opinion. Also, more great news. Kyrsten Sinema killed the voting rights bill, effectively killed filibuster reform.
She so wanted to have that moment where she just puts her thumb down or up.
Well, she gave what I've seen described online as an asinine speech. I didn't watch it live, but went to the floor. And this was before the Biden brunch. Biden was taking everyone to lunch today, right? They're all going to Applebee's or someplace up on the hill.
I'd love to be that server.
You know, you got your U.S. Senate. Well, there's only 50 of them. You know, they'll sit in tables, like 5, 10 tables of 5. And Joe's standing up, like he's the patriarch of the Democratic Senate caucus. And Joe's buying all, if you want the Oreo shake at the end, Joe's buying. But only if you vote for voting reforms. And Sinema had to preempt her president. Had to go out there and cast some shade. No, I'm not for filibuster reform. Although, you know what? She is still claiming to this moment, I'm for the Voting Rights Act. I'm for all this legislation. I'm just against the means of passage. Specifically, and I want to be out front of the president. I want to make sure that I'm the Judas publicly before Joe Biden can, be persuasive behind closed doors.
Well, I mean, that's different than what Judas did. Judas sat through the meal at least, right? I mean, did she announce by saying, I'd like to split my check?
Yeah, her Cobb salad. Joe, don't pay for it.
Cobb salad, Diet Coke, and a cigarette. The cigarette's not on there.
Former U.S. Attorney James Santelle, a crowd favorite, joining me at the bottom of this hour. So what's that, like 20-ish minutes, according to the inaccurate clock on the wall? It's still Thursday, though.
As far as we know.
You know what? It doesn't seem like we've got good news, other than the fact Fancy Brian's back on this show. I know you've been doing your show. My show is kind of important to me.
It's important to me, too. I just need to be physically here to do it sometimes.
Well, welcome back from COVID. But anyways, you want to hear the good news?
I would love it.
Fancy Brian's back. There is a new charge that has been leveled today. FBI took a Oath Keeper under arrest, and the charge against like 10 of them. Seditious conspiracy.
Yay!
Sedition. Wasn't that a defense? And, we talk about Throwback Thursday. It's only been a couple of days since I was, cruising the radio dial up and down, righty talk radio. And what'd they say? Oh, it wasn't an insurrection. It wasn't terrorism. It wasn't, sedition. or they to charge some of those crimes. Well, suck it, Righty Whitey Talk Radio. Yeah. Now they are charging the crimes. And if that's what they're charging the Oath Keepers with, and Merrick Garland said, we will follow the evidence wherever it goes, all the way to the top if necessary. I don't think he meant the top of the Oath Keepers food chain or even the top of the Applebee's menu. I think he's talking about perhaps, the rotten top of the fish that was the Trump administration.
It did leave a nice scent, though. Like it just a lingering, always there scent.
Lysol won't kill that scent.
No.
So lots to talk about today. Also, in the 4:00 hour, I've got a fine U.S. senatorial candidate. His name, Peter Peckarsky. I admire Peter because, he's trying to do something different than the many, many Dems running for the office, or at least for the right to oppose U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. Peter's up on Progressive Talk Radio, and we're going to talk with Peter today in the 4:00 hour. So stick around for Peter Peckarsky. And your phone calls, they're always welcome here, 844-967-2789. I want to start with the Hills reporting, though. Sedition! Seditious Conspiracy. I like this. I like
sedition.
Yes, exactly. Sedition. TheHill.com reporting. Federal prosecutors have charged the founder of Oath Keepers and 10 other members of the far-right militia group with seditious conspiracy for their role in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. Domestic terrorism, I'd call it. Let's jump down to the quote. The seditious conspiracy indictment alleges that following the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, Rhodes conspired with his co-defendants and others to oppose by force the execution of laws governing the transfer of the presidential power by January 20th, 2021, the Justice Department wrote in a release. You know what that means? We're getting a lot closer to Merrick Garland Day.
It could be Merrick Garland Day eventually.
We're getting closer.
Oh, you're saying there's a chance.
Maybe there's a chance. Again, a quote from the indictment leveled by the Department of Justice. Beginning in late December 2020, via encrypted and private communication applications, Rhodes and various co-conspirators coordinated and planned to travel to Washington, D.C. on or around January 6, 2021, the date of the certification of the Electoral College vote. The indictment alleges Rhodes and several co-conspirators made plans to bring weapons to the area to support the operation. The co-conspirators then traveled across the country to D.C. metropolitan area in early January 2021. That's from the indictment. The indictment released on Thursday contains the first seditious conspiracy charges that have been brought in connection with the riot. The charge carries a maximum possible sentence of 20 years in prison. Now we're talking, I'm not talking 6 weeks in club bed. I'm talking 20 years hard time. Anyone found guilty of conspiring to use force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States. The indictment released Thursday, prosecutors said that Rhodes coordinated with members of the right-wing militia group to travel to D.C. for the Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. In the weeks following the 2020 election, Rhodes allegedly vowed in private conversations to use force if President Biden was sworn into office. That's not going to age well either. We aren't getting through this without a civil war. Too late for that. Prepare your mind, body, spirit, he wrote in an encrypted message to other Oath Keepers. November of 2020. Prosecutors said Rhodes also held a meeting with other Oath Keeper leaders in which he outlined a plan to stop the lawful transfer of presidential power, including preparations for the use of force, and urged those listening to participate. I wonder if Ron Johnson would consider these Oath Keepers, these alleged, seditious conspiracists, were they violent or were they just, normal Sunday tourists at the U.S. Capitol? Patriots, you might call them.
All I know is that the Confederate flag was flown at the Capitol that day. It has never flown at the Capitol.
You act like that's a big deal.
It might just be a big deal.
In another message to his co-defendants on December 31st, 2021, Rhodes allegedly wrote, "There is no standard political or legal way out of this." Over the next 2 days, according to the indictment, Rhodes spent $5,000 on firearms and gun equipment. The week before, he bought 2 night vision devices and a weapon sight for $7,000. Prosecutors said that Rhodes helped organize the Oath Keepers, who traveled to D.C. in separate military-style formations. What they call those? Stacks. 2 stacks marched on and breached the Capitol, and an armed quick reaction force waited in the wings outside the city. They had the weapons there, caches of weapons. How do we know that? Another guy got charged today. In the days after January 6th, according to the indictment, Rhodes spent about $17,500 on firearms components, ammunition, and other equipment. That seems like a lot.
I mean, for a spur of the moment thing, yeah.
A little bit more. Merrick Garland, what do you say precisely? I'm going to remind you. We build investigations by laying a foundation. We resolve more straightforward cases first because they provide the evidentiary foundation for more complex cases. Investigating the more overt crimes generates linkage to less overt ones. Overt actors and the evidence they provide can lead us to others who may also been involved, and that evidence can serve as a foundation for further investigative leads and techniques. And then you indict the former president, and it's Merrick Garland Day all across America. Certainly right here on the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. You're listening right now. Can't wait. We got some fine guests, including crowd favorite, former U.S. Attorney James Santelle, joining us at the bottom of the hour. Phone lines are open now, though. 844-967-2789. Seditious conspiracist, one and all. Sedition!
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah!
If you love them enough to barely sleep, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're in the right car seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertisement. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Feeling increasingly lonely right now? You're not alone. Try joining a virtual book club or scheduling an online coffee break with coworkers to connect.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Treat yourself to some Wisco Home Goods natural lotions or sugar scrub in 2022. I'm Don, one of the owners of this family-owned Midwestern business in Madison, Wisconsin. Our natural hand soaps, lotions, and sugar scrubs offer you the luxury you deserve. Wisco Home Goods self-care products come in a variety of scents you're sure to love. So go on, add a little pampering to your daily routine. Order at wiscohomegoods.com. Natural, healthy, nourishing self-care and more at wiscohomegoods.com.
I can't believe it. The way you look sometimes.
The Devil's Advocates, radio for the 99%.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. As we come back from commercial break, breaking news, the Guardian.com reporting, and this is related, that's why I bring it up now. Capitol attack panel subpoenas Google, Facebook, and Twitter for digital records. Oh, that's going to sting some people. The House Select Committee investigating the Capitol attack subpoenaed Twitter, Meta, Alphabet, and Reddit on Thursday for records related to 6th January insurrection. And the Guardian, an overseas outfit. You see how they do that? They flip the dates around European style. The 6th January insurrection as it seeks to review data that could potentially incriminate the Trump White House. We'll see. Facebook is part of Meta and Google is part of Alphabet. The move by the Select Committee suggests the panel is ramping up its examination of social media posts and messages that could provide evidentiary evidence. It's a little redundant.
Evidentiary evidence.
Could provide evidentiary evidence as to who might have been in contact with Trump White House around January 6th, one source said. A redundant source.
Like Major League Baseball, MLB baseball.
Congressman Penny Thompson, the chairman of the Select Committee, said in his statement that he authorized the 4 subpoenas since those platforms were used to communicate plans about the Capitol attack. And yet these social media companies ignored, I tell you, earlier requests. The subpoenas to the 4 social media companies were the last straw for the Select Committee after repeated engagements with the platforms went unheeded. Thompson said in the letters that amounted to stinging rebukes over the platform's lack of cooperation. Thompson said in the subpoena letter to Twitter that the Select Committee is interested in obtaining key documents House investigators suspect the company is withholding that could shed light on how users use the platform to plan and execute the Capitol attack. They used Twitter? Was it Twitter? Anyways, the chairman said the Select Committees were interested in the records from Reddit since the R the Donald subreddit that eventually migrated to a website of the same name hosted significant discussion and planning related to the Capitol attack. Thompson said House investigators were seeking materials from Alphabet, the parent company of YouTube, which was a platform for significant communications by its users who played a key role in the Capitol attack. So the tech companies, they're all being subpoenaed. We'll see how that goes.
They could easily flood them with so much information they can't even possibly decipher it very quickly. Could you imagine how much because they had to be very specific about exactly what they want to see from these folks. Otherwise, if Google wanted to, they could just say, here's all the records of every person breathing from ever.
All the data.
Here's everything.
Yeah, all the data.
I'll see you when it's done downloading in 15 years.
And we've hooked up the AOL.
Very nice. Very nice.
844-967-2789. We use the Facebooks around here and the Twitter at Devil Radio on Twitter, at the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. I guess it is on Facebook. Got a think card. Bill's calling from Oconomowoc. Welcome back, Bill.
Great show, by the way. You guys do a super job.
Don't we, though? Question. Aren't we great at this?
Oh, you do. I'm going to rate you number one nationally. Number one. And
awesome.
I'm not teasing you. You guys are awesome.
Well, thanks, Bill. We weren't teasing either.
Well, let me cut to the chase.
Yes,
Kevin McCarthy refuses to testify because why? He says he has nothing to offer. Oh, Mr. Criminal of the Constitution. Yes, you do. You have one thing to offer. It's called the truth. Can you handle it? Do you know the truth, Mr. Kevin? When he rolls, mark my words, when he rolls, boy, then people are going to get nervous all the way to the top. And I think he will roll. What do you think?
I'm not sure, Bill, if we have a method of compulsion, and we got to find former U.S. attorney joining us very soon. We'll ask his legal opinion, but how do you compel Kevin McCarthy? How do you compel the minority leader to give testimony? If he says, like Jim Jordan and a few others, oh, it's an illegitimate panel, I do not honor the subpoenas. Well, are you going to hold the minority leader in criminal contempt?
Then you issue criminal contempt. I mean, you have to. If Merrick Garland's worth anything, He has to. That's just a form of law. Am I right or am I wrong?
I think you're right. What was your impression? The seditious conspiracy charges. I mean, that is certainly turning up the heat at the DOJ.
You took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to call Ron Johnson and said, now, is that tourism or terrorist? What do you think, Ron? What do you think? How do you interpret that? Were those tourists really, or were they terrorists? What,
I don't know, but I'm suspicious, Bill, that he would still minimize everything.
Well, of course he will, but you can play that man like a fiddle, and you have. And I know you can't get him back on the air, but you can play him out like a fiddle by him.
Can I draw, Bill, I appreciate the kind words, but let me draw a small distinction. Can I ask him back on the air? I could. Do I want him back on the air? No, sir, I do not.
Well, you could, and then you could have a fumigating company come in and, you could have hazmat and have it cleaned up after he left. But
I recommend Zero Res if you're in Madison.
Yeah.
Forward or backwards, it's the right way to clean, Bill.
But when he has his first promotion or his first, get together, gala, whatever you want to call it, please advertise it on your station. I would like to actually go out of my way to participate. And I know I'll run into people where I can ask them some serious questions. And unlike you, I'm not a broadcaster. I'm just man on the street.
Unlike me. Well, Bill, you're not super cool then. In your words, I'm just parroting your words about me, of course. The good ones. I like the good ones. We now bring on a fine guest. He is always generous in spirit and compliments. He is James Santelle, former U.S. attorney. But, he says nice things, but he actually graduated from law school. Unlike yours truly. More Devils. We'll be right back with Jim Santelle.
There's a good chance I may have committed some violent treason.
But it also could be somebody sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds, okay?
Why not gargle?
Talk radio made for the 99% on Devil Radio 92.7 FM and WTCN
Hey,
1580.
Jim Santelle.
Brian, how are you today? Hey, how are you, huh?
I am conscious as far as you know.
On the patio at Salvatore's Tomato
And today in America, that's saying a lot, I think,
Yeah. Usually you start there and you go from other things, but from what I'm told, it's Thursday too. So who knows?
Right. There's something. My dendrites are firing. Who knows what they're doing? But that's good enough. That's kind of a solid A in America today. So, well,
that is true. Object permanence is actually a thing with adults now.
A bit of a hot mess.
Sound is okay. You can hear me?
Sound great. You're looking great.
And
wonderful. Good. I'm most concerned about how I look, frankly.
That's Todd Osborne.
You should. Every time. Not to get you really, really worried about it, but really that's the purpose.
Without an inspection.
You're fine, man. You're great.
You tell me if I have something on my front tooth, right?
No more?
Afterwards. After I did some digital things on your face too. So
good. True friends.
Coronavirus update.
Because I care.
With an AP News.
We're going to lead sedition.
The Dow down 176 points.
I'm sorry. Seditious conspiracy.
The Biden administration from enforcing a requirement employees at large companies be vaccinated or undergo weekly testing and wear a mask on the job. President Biden says his administration is ramping up efforts to surge resources across the country to deal with the Omicron variant.
Facing criticism over COVID-19 test shortages, the president says his team will double its procurement of rapid at-home tests that'll be sent to Americans free.
That means 1 billion tests in total.
And will also, for the first time, make high-quality N95 masks available at no cost. The president acknowledges people are tired of wearing masks.
It's a pain in the neck,
but still necessary. He also says more military medical personnel will deploy nationwide to help ease medical facility staff shortages. Sagar Magani at the White House.
And I'm Ed Donahue.
Deep breath.
Mi's virtual meditation studio has never been busier.
Imagine not working.
They need a remote assistant to realign their scheduling.
Blank calendar. Sorry. Back to your breath.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed, you do. Make calls, schedule virtual interviews, and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you ever wondered why eyeglasses cost so much? The eyewear industry has been dominated by a single company that's kept prices artificially high.
Yikes.
Warby Parker was created to change that. They design and produce their own eyewear and then sell it directly to you for a fraction of the price. Warby Parker's high-quality glasses start at just $95, including your prescription. Try 5 pairs of frames for free. Go to warbyparker.com to pick your 5 frames to try on at home for free. That's warbyparker.com.
For Devil Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM. I'm Luke Mathers with your headlines. This week, the state of Wisconsin began hosting online listening sessions to hear from citizens and experts about how the state government and local municipalities should spend the roughly $420 million Wisconsin is anticipated to receive in opioid settlement funds. Housing for individuals recovering from opioid addiction, expanding the accessibility and availability of Narcan, and mobile treatment units for rural areas were all suggestions from the first listening session. Yesterday, prosecutors in Waukesha County added 71 additional counts against Darrell Brooks Jr., including counts of reckless endangerment, hit and run, and bail jumping for driving his car through the Waukesha Christmas Parade on November 21st. According to new reports from the Wisconsin Policy Forum, alcohol-related deaths rose nearly 25% in Wisconsin during 2020, the largest one-year increase in decades and setting a new record. You're listening to Devil Radio.
You know politics? Again, welcome to the Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. I welcome back one of the finest of guests, former U.S. Attorney, friend of ours, James Santelle. Jim, the word of the day were the words seditious conspiracy. What do you think, my friend?
Seditious conspiracy. Those are the words. And this is a hugely significant movement forward in the investigation, prosecution of people responsible for January 6th. What is sedition? It's rebellion, right? It's rebellion against the authority of the state. And yes, it's incorporated into the criminal statute that these folks are charged with today. Seditious conspiracy, rebelling against the state. You are agreeing to do this. You're engaging in overt acts to accomplish that. We know from the indictment, too, what kinds of things did this particular fellow, Stuart Rhodes, do. He talked about preparing for war in the streets. They had plans to have weapons moved across the Potomac River into Washington, all those kinds of things to do what? To overthrow the government by force. This is a huge, huge statement by the United States Department of Justice about what these people did. It's a level beyond all the charges we have seen up to this point.
Now, Jim, it seems to me that when you talk about violent domestic terrorism, the Oath Keepers were out front. They were militarized. They were organized. They were doing this with intent. And they organized themselves and followed each other in a military style operation. And apparently, when you've got coordinated efforts between multiple people, well, there's your conspiracy, Jim. But the sedition part, I've heard right-wing talk radio. I've heard Fox News. Oh, they were all so quick to chastise Joe Biden and Merrick Garland because, there were no charges that would suggest treason or insurrection, Jim. And if there are no charges, then I guess it never occurred. Well, that didn't age well, did it?
All right. It did not age well. And today we've got the answer to Fox News and those others who would say there's nothing here to see. There's nothing out there. I think you've got it just right. Again, you look at what seditious conspiracy is. Sedition. It is 1 or 2 steps right behind treason. It really is. And not just linguistically, but also legally. That's what the Department of Justice is saying. That's why this is so significant. The other piece of this that I suspect is also being bandied about on the other side of the radio system, if you will, is that we also had cooperating witnesses, right? At least 4 of them talking about what these folks were doing. So people presumably inside this particular group, knowing what's going on, attributing things. And here's the really interesting part too. Encrypted cell phone calls, chats, recordings of online meetings. We've got lots and lots of information, and that raises the issue, of course, what is next? If the Department of Justice has all of this information, human beings talking about it, and the electronic and documentary support for this seditious behavior, who else is involved? People in Capitol Hill, maybe people at the far end of Pennsylvania Avenue as well.
Well, Jim, you would suspect it's not smaller fish, because there had been Oath Keepers that were quote unquote these smaller fish that were not charged with the seditious conspiracy. Not all of the participants were so charged, just the ringleaders, the active participants. So if you have uncharged others, co-conspirators that have yet to be charged at this point, these ain't Oath Keepers. These are what, either funders or these are, electeds, as you mentioned.
And these can be organizers. You don't have to have a title behind your name. It could be providing some monetary.
I suppose Steve Bannon was not elected to any higher office.
Absolutely. That kind of person out there who's even doing some things like meet me at the local coffee shop, all that kind of thing to promote an agreement, to promote a conspiracy, to move forward, to overthrow the government. And that's why this is so significant. That, again, the question, what is happening next? That issue of how broad this conspiracy plays out. And again, the Department of Justice building upon those initial charges for people who did conspire to attack, right, to obstruct what was going on in Capitol Hill. This is much broader. This goes back before January 6th, goes back to times right after the election, and even follows it in terms of things going on. And so if I were a member of Congress today whose documents are out there, whose cell phone information also being sought today, we know, Reddit, Twitter, documents being sought by the committee, again, a different entity, there's an awful lot of material out there that suggests that there's communication going on. And I do not believe that this is the last time we'll hear about a conspiracy again to overthrow, to rebel against the government.
Let's linger on these new subpoenas being issued by the January 6th committee, apparently targeting these tech companies like Google, like Facebook. Jim, is there information that has been shielded from the committee? It seems as if the prior requests of these tech companies had gone unheeded. Will they now be compelled via subpoena?
There's a difference between requesting something, if I ask you to give it to me, as opposed to subpoenaing you, which has the force of law. It's actually a court document. You're issuing a subpoena on behalf, in this case, a legitimate investigative body. It is the Congress itself. There's a difference. And it appears that people like groups like Reddit and Twitter, the others you mentioned, up to now at least have said, not so much, we're not going to cooperate. And so the question in part is you and other journalists looking at this saying, gee, why aren't you cooperating? But second, to your question, a subpoena now raises the stakes. It says you are now compelled by virtue of the authority of the Congress to respond, to give us the information. We asked for it nicely, to put it in a sort of a parochial language. You haven't done that. Now we're going to compel you to do so. And just like the other subpoenas that can be the subject of criminal prosecutions for failure to comply with the subpoena, this could be going down that road too. You would like to think that those corporate heads would say, well, all right, now we've got a subpoena. We are compelled to do this. Let's produce that information to the chair and the vice chair and the other members of the committee that we have decided for whatever reason not to produce up until now.
Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Got the finest of guests live via Zoom. He is former U.S. Attorney James Santelle. And Jim, I got the $64,000 question. Can a member of Congress, let's call him the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, could he be compelled to testify by congressional subpoena? If he says, I don't recognize the legitimacy, you wouldn't let me put Jim Jordan on the committee, so I'm not honoring your request, and they will subpoena, and he won't honor that probably either, Jim. And then what happens?
And then we have another contest, don't we, to put it mildly. Again, we're going down these roads that we've talked about so often, Mike, where I'm not saying it's completely unprecedented, but we haven't had to deal with this before, right? Where you've got a subpoena typically issued by a congressional committee, a legitimate committee, asking for information from people outside of Congress. Very rarely, if ever, looking internally. We know that they're doing that now, and especially with the McCarthy subpoena now, that request being made, his decision not to, obviously yesterday telling us he's not going to cooperate. This raises a question now again about the authority of this committee to enforce a member of its own group to comply. Presumably, at some point, the committee could, again, as it's done before, pursue judicial action for the enforcement of that subpoena. I would argue, as I have before in other settings, that Congress has its own inherent authority exercised 100 years ago and 100 years before that to enforce its own subpoenas. This committee, again, sufficiently aggressive to this point, but to the extent it continues to meet these roadblocks, like the Kevin McCarthys of the world, should go out there and bring these people in, compel them at least to sit down and explain why they're not responding. Do those things that are aggressive to ensure that the American public knows this committee is serious. And so we're going to have a fight here, and probably ending up once again in the courts.
Jim, Kevin McCarthy has certainly changed his tune. When questioned by journalist Manu Raju, he said, sure, I'll go talk about my conversations with Donald Trump on January 6th. And reportedly, Kevin McCarthy had called the president, and the president said, well, apparently, Kevin, they're more concerned about the outcome than you are. And that would seem to be an implication of the president that, you know, he was in support of the insurrectionist acts that were going on. But once Kevin McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago and kissed the ring and kissed Trump's ass, well, there was a whole different Kevin McCarthy, a different public tune. And it brings up the question of witness tampering. And here's what I'm really getting at. We've talked a lot about the fact there was this violent insurrection at the Capitol, perhaps inspired and incited by Trump, and perhaps, you know, Steve Bannon and others played some part in directing that force. But there was also a procedural coup underfoot, the Green Bay sweep, as it was characterized. So is it theoretically possible? I guess I don't want to, you know, read too many tea leaves here, but could Kevin McCarthy have been in on the Green Bay sweep? Could he have been on the procedural coup? And the fact that he was, you know, in objection to the violent insurrectionists that might try to hang his ass at the U.S. Capitol building, well, he was against that until he talked to Trump. And maybe Trump said, hey, Kevin, let's not forget you are a part of this. You are a co-conspirator. It'd be easy to tamper with this witness, Jim, you know, and create conspiracy theory.
Right. And I think you're not too far, if not far at all, from what should be looked at here. Again, we assume that all these things are regular because they're being said in the public domain. And we forget that people are saying things that plainly reflect obstruction of justice. Right. And again, I know I won't resist the temptation to talk about the second part of the Mueller report again today. That's what that was all about. It was the former president now telling people not to cooperate, dangling pardons in front of them, coercing them to say things in his behalf. If in fact, and there very well could be, if evidence that the former president coerced or compelled or in some way simply affected Kevin McCarthy, plainly going from one side to the other about his cooperation, that can also be obstruction of justice. You're inhibiting someone from providing the truth, information to a legitimate investigative body. That's what obstruction is all about. And if there's any doubt about it, I mean, as you said, not only the things that Kevin McCarthy has said very broadly, but the letter to him, are these things relevant to their investigation? Absolutely. Talking to President Trump at the time about a censure resolution he could be facing, impeachment, removal under the 25th Amendment. Are you able to do your job? He may have identified possible options like maybe even resigning. All of that, it goes to not only the substance of those conversations, but also to what his intent was, Kevin McCarthy's intent was, and frankly, to the extent the former president responded, things that are revelatory about his state of mind also. Cannot overstate the extent to which this kind of information is substantive, it is material, it's relevant, and the notion that you're going to try to stop it, whether it's directly to Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney or against a court order, is, from my perspective, obstruction of the same kind of order that we've seen in the past.
Jim, we're seeing this January 6th committee suddenly move with alacrity. We're seeing a lot of subpoenas. We're seeing a lot of action. And obviously, we see resistance from those that perhaps are implicated in this. A little self-preservation might factor in as well. But Jim, what do you think the nature of the public hearings will be? We know that there is testimony that has been given to the committee in private that, if made public, could certainly shape our opinions of this. Can you compel the same sort of testimony publicly that you might be able to compel privately? And here's one other side note. I know that there have been a number of Trump aides and Mike Pence aides and perhaps aides to Congress people, well, a Kevin McCarthy might refuse to give testimony, or a Mike Pence might be resistant. There are a lot of people that work around these supposed important electeds, and those people can also be compelled to testify. Is it likely the January 6th committee has lots of supporting testimony, but maybe just not from the principals?
Right. I think that's probably it. That we don't have some of these key figures. The folks, again, we make reference often to the Willard Hotel people are also much the subject of this conspiracy. But plainly, we've got an awful lot of folks who fall in that category, Mike, you just described, the staff assistants, the other folks around there provided a huge amount of testimony. I would simply offer this, that the committee already knows a lot about this. The information is providing these letters describing the reason for their subpoenas tells them what they know already. If we go to this situation where we've got in-person hearings on the radio, on television, they're going to pick and choose the people who make those points clear and to establish things, not only like seditious conspiracy, but also connections beyond inside Capitol Hill, but also down Pennsylvania Avenue, as I said before. This is going to be a very wise and measured selection of those people who've got the best presentations to make for the American public.
You know, that does sound like a made-for-radio event. We got the finest of guests. He joins me right here on the radio. He is James Santelle. Come back, more devil's advocates. We'll even out it, perhaps, broach the vaccine mandates. They were overturned today by the U.S. Supreme Court. More devils.
If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
Is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Generally, that is accurate.
I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees. I promise.
I'm not certain
Stories come to life at your local parks and forests. They're places of wonder, and they're closer than you think. Make the forest part of your story today at a local park near you, or find one at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids, thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertisement. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Spruce up your home with soy candles from Wisco Home Goods. I'm Don, one of the owners of this family-owned Midwestern business in Madison, Wisconsin. Our candles are 100% sustainable and come in a variety of unique blends and scents. Did you know our candle jars are also double old-fashioned glasses? That's right, buy a candle and you get a free cocktail glass. Check out our blog at wiscohomegoods.com/blog for more information. That's wiscohomegoods.com/blog.
Being a father is an honor, a challenge, a duty, a celebration, and a testimony. I want to be legendary for you because I found everything to live for.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Hi, folks. This is Kirk Bankstead of the Minocqua Brewing Company, and I'm excited to announce our new beer, AOC IPA. This IPA pays homage to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a champion of the progressive movement. AOC IPA is now available in stores throughout Wisconsin. Check our website, MinocquaBrewingCompany.com, to see which stores in your area are carrying it.
The Devil's Advocates, the fix for political junkies everywhere.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. We got a fine legal eagle. He is my friend, James Santelle, former U.S. attorney. He is, the returning champ. I kind of feel like when we do it on Zoom, like we're on a TV game show, Jim. So let's continue with the family feud. Let me ask you, sir, the U.S. Supreme Court today, and I guess I wasn't shocked, but I thought the Biden administration was on solid law when they put forth a vaccine mandate for big businesses. And as I understood the 6-3 ruling, all the conservatives for, all the liberals against, well, you can't force big business to have vaccine mandates. But in a secondary 5-4 ruling where Roberts joined with the liberals, well, but it is okay to mandate that health employees get vaccinated. So I'm not sure on what legal grounds, because these seem like oxymoronic rulings, Jim, on what legal grounds is one permitted and the other not?
Right. And again, can I say at the outset that this is one of the most disappointing and frankly shocking, not surprising, but shocking things that I think is coming out of the Supreme Court these days. And we're anticipating, obviously, in June of this year, something related to firearms, something more about privacy rights. All this is going to really focus, again, the kind of attention we've got in the Supreme Court today, which found in a situation where we have an OSHA statute that permits the executive branch to issue this kind of directive, what for the purpose of keeping us healthy, keeping us safe and secure. And the Supreme Court says you cannot do that. We're on track to, as you well know, to identify very soon, 1 million Americans will have died before too long from this. We are at the highest levels for hospitalizations for the spread of this disease. And the United States Supreme Court tells us that, in fact, this is not a proper exercise of the OSHA statutory authority given to it by the United States Congress. And again, they rely upon this notion that, well, the question is whether or not the Congress authorized this kind of limitation, this kind of mandate on businesses. The distinction between that and those people who are the Medicare, Medicaid recipients is one that I have to take a closer look at. Plainly, this is John Roberts probably identifying something related to congressional authority and executive branch authority and doing the kinds of winnowing and sifting that only lawyers and maybe Supreme Court justices do on a regular basis. But from a public view standpoint, and that's what you step back and you think about all the major Supreme Court cases. We don't think about them in terms of the fine points that lawyers love to talk about. We think about the ways in which they impact the United States of America, education, commerce, all kinds of things, immigration. This is one that I think will go down in history as one of the dark days, once again, of this Supreme Court. And the distinction that is very nice of John Roberts to try to throw some of his weight back in the opposite direction, but too little, frankly, Mr. Chief Justice. And I recognize that he is facing an uphill battle on all of these kinds of things. But again, as we look at the opinion in greater detail and step back from it, we're going to look at this as one of those days that I think is going to be a watershed day in the history of this pandemic in our nation. And plainly, an attempt by the executive branch to keep us well. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. Again, when there's a statute that permits that to happen, this is stunning.
Jim, obviously some have been laid off because this federal mandate, the Biden executive order, if you will, or directive to OSHA, forced some people out of their workplaces. Now, are they going to turn around and sue the Biden administration? Are we going to see, oodles of litigation here? Has this opened Pandora's box? And I guess here's another two-parter, Jim. If I am a corporation, can I still mandate that my employees get vaccinated, whether or not the federal government can make that request?
I think as to the second portion, the answer has got to be yes, right? You can impose reasonable limitations and guidelines on your own employees, things as simple as when you show up to work, office breaks, lunch hours, those kinds of things, the way that you behave. And this is certainly one of them. You cannot walk into an office with a box of plutonium, those kinds of things. That's a ridiculous example. But you can impose yourself those kinds of restrictions. And we certainly hope that these major corporations, 100 more, frankly, less than 100, would do these kinds of things to keep us safe and secure. The issue about what the consequences of this are, I think that's one of the collateral impacts of this, that you will have employees now saying, well, wait a minute, I was forced to leave because I was not vaccinated. The Supreme Court has now vindicated my position. I'm now going to sue. I'm going to sue my former employer. I'm going to sue the federal government, all those kinds of things. I would offer simply this. The Supreme Court has also said, admittedly a long time ago, that we don't all stand alone. There's some great language in cases from the past, I've sometimes quoted on this show and other places, that talks about the fact that we are a community. And I like to think that at some point, that kind of language will be embraced again, that says you do not stand alone in the United States. And because of that, your right, your individual right is limited limited insofar as you cannot detrimentally affect my health and my security, my safety. That's a fundamental principle the Supreme Court has also articulated. I would offer it's backed off of that today by virtue of this OSHA ruling. Very, very troubling.
My fine guest, former U.S. Attorney James Santelle. He is a fellow Wisconsinite. Before we run completely out of time, Jim, got to ask you about the backyard politics. Gableman, the sort of Joe McCarthy-esque investigations of the political electoral process 2 years after the fact. They're looking for a scapegoat here, I think, Jim. I'm not really sure where this investigation is going to, but there has been some threatened arrests and some jailings of some mayors and some other officials. Has Gableman, the corrupted former Supreme Court Justice, Jim, has he backed off that, or are we going to see good Dims in jail for the 2 years?
I don't think we're going to see anybody in jail for this, again, because that theory for jailing people for those kinds of things that are proposed by him and a certain sheriff, they're ridiculous, and not just practically, but also legally. That's not where we're going with this. The larger issue, of course, is this continues to be an investigation that is baseless. It has no predicate at all. I was very disappointed to see a Wisconsin Circuit Court judge decline to quash the subpoenas as to the Wisconsin election folks. And you've heard me advocate for this before, Mike, and on your show and others. Action to try to stop this has got to be even broader. This is abusive, and how it is that a former Supreme Court justice can legitimately get up in the morning and say, this is what I'm pursuing, is beyond me. But beyond that, the people in the state of Wisconsin should be legitimately outraged by not only the extension of this investigation, but also by the impact, as we've talked before. What does this do? Even the circuit court's ruling, it basically says, gosh, there must be something there. There must be some reason that this is being pursued, that all these things are being done, and that's the real purpose. We might think about the ultimate goal of this being to uncover something. It never will. The purpose of it is the investigation itself, to suggest that voting in Wisconsin is not legitimate and not to be relied on. That's the purpose.
It's almost reminds someone of like the Hunter Biden, laptop, things like that. It's all about the smear, not the actual crime or lack thereof. James Santelle, always a fine guest. Thank you so much for coming round to the Devil's Advocate, sir.
Good to be with you again, Mike. Take care.
Thank you. Hour 2 is next. Stick around all.
So run, you cur! Run! Tell all the other curs the law's coming!
Do you need to hire? Let Devil Radio help your business find the right candidate with our Help Wanted Half Minutes. Devil Radio will create a 30-second job listing for your business, play it on Devil Radio for the month, will feature your job listing during Afternoon Drive on Fridays, and will even publish your Help Wanted listing on Devil Radio 927.com's website, all for just $300 per month. If you're hiring, Devil Radio can help. Call today.
Local celebrities for 1,000, Rob.
This Mama Award-winning radio personality and local celebrity can be heard Saturday nights on Max Inc. Radio.
That's easy, Rob. Who is Rocker?
Ooh, sorry, Rocker, no.
It's me, Rob. Who is Terry Barr? I'll be co-hosting Max Inc. Radio with Rocker, and we'll be interviewing local artists and previewing where they're going to be playing around town.
Catch Terry Barr and Rocker along with the Max Inc. Radio crew. Listen to local music, interviews, and catch live performances in the Devil's Lair.
You are listening to WTTN 1580 AM Columbus, W224 EG Madison, always streaming on the Devil Radio app.
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. The Supreme Court is stopping the Biden administration from enforcing its coronavirus vaccine plan for businesses. The AP's Ben Thomas has the story.
The rule required that businesses with at least 100 employees ensure their workers were either vaccinated against COVID-19 or undergo weekly testing and wear a mask while on the job. The court's conservative majority concluded the administration overstepped its authority with the rule, which would have affected more than 80 million Americans. In dissent, the court's 3 liberals argued it was the court that was overreaching, substituting its judgment for that of health experts. At the same time, the court is allowing the administration's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. That rule has medical and religious exemptions. Ben Thomas, Washington.
New York's new mayor, Eric Adams, reversed an earlier pledge to keep children in schools and said he would consider allowing a return to some form of virtual instruction. The leader of the Proud Boys militia group, Stuart Rhodes, and 10 others are the first to be charged by the Justice Department with seditious conspiracy in the Capitol riot. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is refusing to provide information to the House committee investigating the riot.
It is pure politics of what they're playing.
McCarthy's stand is forcing committee members to consider whether they should subpoena one of their own. Queen Elizabeth is stripping her son, Prince Andrew, of all his honorary military titles and royal roles. Andrew faces allegations he sexually abused a teenage girl supplied to him by American financier Jeffrey Epstein. Former British Colonel Rupert Wheelock says it's awkward for soldiers to have to pay tribute to anyone in an honorary position.
Who doesn't match the standards, the high standards that are expected of our armed forces in the 21st century. And clearly, Prince Andrew is in that situation.
The Dow finished down 176 points. This is AP News.
Deep breaths.
Mai's virtual meditation studio has never been busier.
Imagine not working.
They need a remote assistant to realign their scheduling.
Blank calendar. Sorry, back to your breath.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Make calls, schedule virtual interviews, and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you ever wondered why eyeglasses cost so much? The eyewear industry has been dominated by a single company that's kept prices artificially high.
Yikes.
Warby Parker was created to change that. They design and produce their own eyewear and then sell it directly to you for a fraction of the price. Warby Parker's high-quality glasses start at just $95, including your prescription. Try 5 pairs of frames for free. Go to warbyparker.com to pick your 5 frames to try on at home for free. That's warbyparker.com.
Quit surfing the dial. You already found the greatest radio station ever, Devil Radio, on 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM.
Hi, this is Brad from Zero Res. If you need someone to help with your carpet cleaning, business or residence, please give us a call. We have the best system available and an amazing team of friendly technicians. Call us at 848-9000 or schedule online at zeroresmadison.com.
If you think you need a home inspection, you probably do. Hi, I'm Todd Osborne of Orion Inspections. And buyers, sellers, and even flippers, I'm talking to you. Knowledge is power when it comes to real estate transactions. You'll get an image pack, searchable, digital, printable report of the condition of the house, things to keep an eye on, any safety issues or defects, and the knowledge to make smart, informed decisions. Your instinct is telling you to get an inspection, and instincts are usually right. Learn more or schedule today at orioninspections.com.
5 your local single source IT solutions provider, specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy 59s.com.
When it comes to computers, Madison Computer Works has been the leader in computer help, service, and support for more than 35 years. Our friendly techs have the expertise to help you choose the right computer for your needs. We make it easy to get a new computer by moving your data, reinstalling programs, and setting up your printers and email for you. Our competitive pricing and awesome tech support make moving to a new computer painless and affordable. Whether servicing your old computer or buying a new one, we'll help you do it right. Madison Computer Works, computers that work for you.
Here's how you get them. If they bring a beer, you bring an old-fashioned. If they bring cheese curds, you bring a casserole. That's how you make friends. That's the Wisconsin way. That's Devil Radio.
For Devil Radio, 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM, I'm Luke Mathers with your headlines. On Wednesday, the Madison School District announced the district will be updating the quarantine time for students, teachers, and staff to be in accordance with the new guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC guidelines changed from 10 days of quarantine to 5 days for asymptomatic individuals. The conservative Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty filed a lawsuit against the Evers administration this week, contending the method the governor is using to distribute federal COVID-19 relief funds for homeowners is unconstitutional. A Madison property developer is proposing to knock down more buildings on the 400 block of State Street for new development projects. Foggy skies expected this morning with a chance for slight snowfall early in the day. Cloudy skies this afternoon with light winds and a high of 35 degrees. Cloudy skies expected to continue into the evening with an overnight low of 18 degrees. You're listening to Devil Radio, 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM.
Devil Radio programming is produced live in the Solidarity Realty Studios. Find them at solidarityrealty.com. Solidarity Realty. There is an alternative.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. 3, 2, 1. Now live from the Devil Radio Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning. Welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Here is your host, Mike Crute.
Welcome back. Hour 2 of the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Coming up a bit later in this big hour, let me think how I want to say this. U.S. senatorial candidate Peter Peckarsky. Peter joins us on the airwaves at 4:30, so you'll stick around for that. And I've got to give you a few updates, some health updates, a few other updates. Fancy Brian, we welcome you back on this big show. You were COVID positive. I'm not trying to break your HIPAA or anything.
No, that I have no, folks, I've gone to the COVID land and you don't want to be there. I am vaccinated. I'm double vaccinated. I had not gotten boosted yet. I'm having some health issues otherwise, which also played into a part because it hit me when I was kind of weak and it hit me like a truck. I never felt like I had to go to the hospital or I was going to die, but I definitely have not had a flu that bad ever.
You know, my youngest also is positive with COVID. In fact, he's been positive long enough. They've had him go back to school. I'm not quite sure the CDC. I'm very confused. You know, I get it sometimes when the righties say the CDC, a little bit of confusing sort of advice that they're currently.
A lot of what they're doing is based on the fact that Omicron does move through you much faster. And even though it hits hard, it leaves you very quickly as well. Comes in, punches you in the face, and leaves relatively quickly compared to the other variants, from what I understand. And I think that CDC variants or guidance is now based on that. Funny enough, that's the same guidance that we are already following with our family anyway. So we're all good to go.
You know what, though? I gotta admit, I was getting kind of cavalier. I mean, I am vaccinated twice and boosted. You know, we went to Vegas before Christmas.
Yeah.
And Zion, but mostly Vegas. And I joked, I was joking with people on the elevator, people not wearing their masks in the confined space with me. Oh, don't worry about your mask. You know, we're all coming back with COVID from Vegas. And that was Christmas Eve that we got back. And that's about the time the airlines started canceling flights because all the flight crews were getting the COVID, right? Well, we've counted ourselves fortunate. It wasn't until probably New Year's Eve that my son got exposed. And, you know, I've been a little cavalier. I've just thought, man, I'm bulletproof. Isn't this the whole reason I got vaccinated? So if someone near me, like Fancy Brian or my son, gets COVID and I get a little exposure to them, well, it's less likely that I'm going to get COVID.
Oh, you can still get it. You just won't die from it.
Yes, well, that was my thought.
The vaccine mandate is to make sure that the hospitals don't get overrun, not so you don't get COVID. It's just so that you don't die when it happens.
Well, once upon a time, they told us if you get the vaccine, you won't get the COVID. Now they tell us, well, with Omicron, that might be different. And again, I'm not trying to be cavalier. I'm not taking the attitude, well, hope I'm getting it already. No, I don't take that attitude. Not entirely. The thought has crossed my mind. I'll be honest with you folks. Like what Fauci say the other day, we're all going to get it. We're probably all going to get it.
At this point, Omicron is so catchy that the way that it's going to plateau and go down is when it runs out of people to infect.
Well, in my household, my youngest had it. My youngest is 15. He got the partial dose vaccine predicated on age. My older son, who's now 18, has had 2 shots plus a booster. He did not get it. He's been negative on all the PCR and the rapid test. My wife, who started with the Johnson & Johnson and now has been boosted, she didn't get it. And I've gone through a rapid test and I went and got a PCR test. And I got to tell you, man, that was a little intrusive today.
Yeah, they get up in there, man. 5 times.
Same nostril twice. Like, come on, you wrecked it the first time. Leave a little something. So anyways, I got my PCR and I'm hopeful that I'm not some sort of asymptomatic spreader. I'll let you know.
That's the problem with Omicron, is that sometimes, especially even if you're vaccinated, it will come and go so fast. You might even be positive for maybe half of a day or would show up on a test, and you may have spread it as well without even knowing. That's also one of the dangers of Omicron too, is that it can come and go without even knowing that you had it. I mean, Amy was definitely experiencing symptoms on the way back from my parents' house, and all 3 of us were in the same car together. There's no way that none of us are going to get it. And that's why I was like, well, if Amy's positive, even if we aren't, I'm not going anywhere, because there's no way we could not have gotten it. We're breathing the same air a foot ahead. Our heads are a foot away from each other.
Do you see the Texas teacher? She went to, I believe, a COVID testing site with her teenager in the trunk, and she was charged. She was charged.
Oh, really?
Some sort of, child abuse.
Well, yeah, you can't.
Child endangerment.
It's illegal to do.
Oh, you can't put the kid in the trunk?
I mean,
that's how we always travel.
Shouldn't say it out loud. And honestly, there's probably some places in Wisconsin that are like, yeah, that's the proper place.
But you can ride in the back of a pickup truck, because I've seen that as well.
Like I said, welcome to Wisconsin or the United States and freedom. It's all about freedom, Prudy.
Who's got COVID? I've actually got a handful of friends right now, and you and my buddy Boother and my buddy Dominic had COVID, and all kinds of people I know currently have COVID. And the fact that I'm not showing any symptoms just makes me think, oh, maybe I got a bad test. I don't know.
You know what? You'd never know, because Amy and Darby and I were all together at the same time. Darby had symptoms for maybe a total of 2 hours, enough for us to keep her out of school. And she's a kid that still likes going to school. So I know she's not, faking, oh, I can't go to school now. But my point is that she never really did anything besides that. But at the same time, she was definitely exposed by us. So we kept her home from school that week. But again, you got to go and do this as common sense as you possibly can, as well as keeping in mind the guidelines and everything. Darby came home from school the other day and she's like, Dad, I'm so sorry. I left my mask off, or, I forgot to wear it this one time. And I'm like, Darby, look, the whole idea is to wear it as much as possible, so you have as many possibilities to keep it. Again, this is a week afterwards. She's wearing her mask in school now. That's part of the guidelines. She never tested positive, but again, she was exposed the whole week. So in school now, I have her wearing a mask. My point is that the second she takes it off, it's not like dead. Oh, COVID now. We're all screwed. The whole point is it's guidelines to make sure that we are staying safe as much as possible, keeping the percentages up around us. That's why you get boosters. That's why you wear the mask and boosters. That's why you keep distancing. That's why I'm staying over here. But when I go closer to you, I'm going to wear my mask, not because I also, have a respiratory thing right now. So
come on, man, I've been missing you. I need a hug.
I miss you too, bro. I want to hug you, but the whole point
is got a hug.
We're gonna, dude. It's just later, and the anticipation will really, really make it all that much less.
Well, let's talk about someone I feel less sympathetic for. Glenn Beck's got the COVID. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He claims he's very sick, and now he's taking the horse paste, as only one should. A little bit of the reporting over at the Raw Story went on Mark Levin's show. Mark Levin, a very annoying righty-whitey talk host, conservative radio host. Glenn Beck is not doing well in his struggle with the COVID-19, according to the Daily Beast. However, Beck made it clear that he's using the medication known as ivermectin, which has not been proven to be an effective treatment. I'm great, Mark. I'm great, Mark. Beck told Mark Levin, despite having COVID and seeing the destruction of our country, he added, Do you have the COVID right now? Levin asked. Yeah, I do. It's COVID-19 starting to go into my lungs today, and a little disturbing. I'm on all the medications and treatments and everything else. So,
except for the vaccine.
He's apparently unvaccinated. This is the second time that Beck has had the COVID after telling Fox News host Tucker Carlson he had it in April of 2021. It was one of the reasons he said he didn't need to get the vaccine. It's all good. Beck said, coughing in his conversation with Levin. And literally, I listened to the tape. He was coughing, like trying to clear his lungs before he talked, but he was doing so on an open microphone. It sounded like I just sounded. That was purposeful, if you didn't know. That's probably not COVID for me, probably more likely cannabis. But anyways, that's what he sounded like. He was hacking his lungs out. Here's what else Beck said. Mark, I'm not concerned about it. I'm really not. I just am so done with this whole COVID thing. I know it's real. I'm a fatty fat fatso, so that's probably not the best thing. And I got some other issues. Oh, I'd say. Beck went on to say that he doesn't think that the monoclonal antibodies are working on the new strain, which means he has the Omicron variant. Sadly, the miracle treatment has been called ineffective against the newest strain. He listed off the drugs he was taking, including the antiparasitic drug ivermectin, which is used to treat parasitic roundworm infections. The drug is known for causing side effects such as headache, dizziness, muscle pain, nausea, and explosive diarrhea, according to WebMD. Not that I'm wishing that on Glenn Beck, but, just thinking aloud.
Hey, man. Yeah.
A little bit more from Beck. I'll do the quote. I've had it for about a week, Beck said, coughing more. I'm not going downhill. I mean, I think I'm feeling better. It's just getting into my lungs. You'll want to avoid that. Yes, you will. Fancy Brian, do you feel like the COVID went to your lungs?
Actually, the only symptom I fought a different boss every single day, and the only boss I didn't fight was the respiratory thing, which is the one thing I was worried about. And I didn't get that the entire time. It was only when I started testing negative that I started getting a respiratory infection, which is why I'm wearing a mask outside of my little bubble here in the studio.
When I had to check off the possible symptoms on the PCR test, and there are secondary set, and I don't really have any symptoms, but I do have some, pre-existing conditions. Much like Glenn Beck, I'm a little bit of a fatty fat fatso. So I got that, me and Glenn Beck. But, I've been vaccinated, Glenn, because I'm not going to lose any weight here. And I don't want to die from COVID. Yeah, but you were on the COVID-19 weight loss plan. Everyone loses 19. Come back, more devils.
I don't care what drug will work. Try a bunch of them.
Why not gargle?
My Shiro always goes the extra mile, stretches every dollar, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. Get free tips to help boost your retirement savings now at aceyourretirement.org.
Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families, despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertisement. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at P4PPC.org.
Here's today's STEM tip. Don't throw out that old plastic bottle. Repurpose it by turning it into an awesome terrarium. Just fill it with sand, pebbles, soil, and your favorite plant. It'll grow sealed right in its own ecosystem. Learn more at She Can STEM. A message from the Ad Council.
Treat yourself to some Wisco Home Goods natural lotions or sugar scrub in 2022. I'm Don, one of the owners of this family-owned Midwestern business in Madison, Wisconsin. Our natural hand soaps, lotions, and sugar scrubs offer you the luxury you deserve. Wisco Home Goods self-care products come in a variety of scents you're sure to love. So go on, add a little pampering to your daily routine. Order at wiscohomegoods.com. Natural, healthy, nourishing self-care and more at wiscohomegoods.com.
Well, all right, you squares, it's time you smoke. Fire up this funk and let's have a toke.
When they go low, we get high.
Make it dance.
The Devil's Advocates.
Everybody get high.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Welcome back from the 420 break. I got my beloved Fancy Brian back on the board today. You can tell the difference. No offense to Evan or any of the other fine producers around here, but I got the best. And there's a clear difference, fella.
I do what I can, man. I do what I can.
Well, what you do is magical, and we've missed it around here. Got a quick headline. We've got a fine U.S. senatorial candidate, attorney by trade, Peter Peckarsky, is going to join us next. But I got to look in the backyard here in the state of Wisconsin. The fraud. I think if you've watched Rachel Maddow of late, you've seen the stories about the fake electors. And here in the state of Wisconsin, there were 10 Republicans, and these are all connected Republicans. These aren't John Q. Citizen, Jane Q. Citizen. These are like vice chair of the local county parties or the chair people. How the chairman, at the time, chairman of the Republican Party of the state of Wisconsin helped to perpetrate this fraud. So first and foremost, let's name names. I'd like to make sure these names are out there for the public record. Bear with me just a moment. I'll pull them up. Here they are, the 10, and I would call them somewhat seditionists, but here they are. Bob Spindell, he is the Republican appointee to the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and he committed fraud in the state of Wisconsin in regards to the election. He claimed he was a Trump elector. He signed a fraudulent document saying that Trump was entitled to his false fraudulent elector vote. Along with Bob Spindell, there was Andrew Hitt, then chairman of the state Republican Party. Kelly Rue, she was the chairwoman of the 8th Congressional District GOP. Carol Bruner, vice chairwoman of the 1st Congressional District GOP, all in the state of Wisconsin, of course. Scott Grabens. I've appeared on television with Scott prior. He's the chairman of the Dane County Republican Party in the county where I live. Bill Feehan is the chairman of the La Crosse County Republican Party. Again, these are very connected with the party kind of people. These are not John Q. person on the street that just wanted to throw themselves out there with a big lie. Kathy Kierden, chairwoman of the 5th Congressional District GOP. Daryl Carlson, Daryl Darryl, fancy style, chairman of the 6th Congressional District GOP. Pam Travis, vice chairwoman of the 1st Congressional District GOP. And Mary Burstrin, vice chairwoman for the Midwest region for the Republican National Convention. So they've all got resume, folks. Here's the problem. The complaint filed against them with the Wisconsin Elections Commission, it's languished for like a year plus. I mean, they signed this stuff back the same day the electors picked Joe Biden, you know, the actual winner of the state of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Elections Commission has yet to act on a complaint it received nearly a year ago that alleges Republicans committed fraud. They did by submitting paperwork to federal officials that falsely claimed Donald Trump won the state in 2020. Among those filing documents, and there is a confession contained in this article. Patrick Barley, the fine reporter, doesn't, point the bright neon sign, but wait for the confession. It's right in the body of this article. Among those filing documents that tried to give Wisconsin electoral votes to Trump was Bob Spindell, a longtime Republican activist who sits on the commission that is supposed to consider the complaint. Did you hear that? Bob Spindell is supposed to, because he is on the Wisconsin Elections Commission. He's also someone that perpetrated this fraud. He wants to sit in and make ruling upon himself. He wants to be his own judge. Spindell has alleged the other commissioners are trying to force him off the case. Yeah, no kidding, Sherlock. You're complicit. You committed fraud. You broke the law. You don't get to sit as your own judge. You are, you need to recuse, sir. Now listen for the confession. Elections officials have given no signs of when they will rule on the unusual case. Milwaukee County's district attorney similarly has been mum about what he is doing with a complaint he received. Well, they'd like to have him thrown out, John Chisholm, the Milwaukee County Democratic district attorney. But let me read on. The confession, it's coming up soon. The officials are weighing what to do as Democrats and election experts raise alarms about the possibility of future efforts in Wisconsin and elsewhere to hand the presidency to a losing candidate. That's what this fraud was trying to do, folks. As in Wisconsin, Republicans in 6 other states that Trump lost filed paperwork trying to lay claim to the Electoral College votes that weren't theirs. The paperwork they filed, well, it's nearly identical in many cases, according to copies of the paperwork posted online last year by the liberal group American Oversight. And I would point out the American Oversight, they sued Speaker Robin Vos here in the state of Wisconsin. He was deposed, right? Didn't Vos get deposed? Went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they said, no, go give testimony why you will not release any of the public records requests on this investigation going on. But here, folks, is a confession. The Trump campaign wanted Wisconsin to do this. I think that's pretty clear in the public record that's out there, said Bob Spindell, the guy that perpetrated the fraud. Did you hear him? Did you hear him? He's confessing. And he's confessing on behalf of the Trump team. Trump told us to do this. We did not do this of our own volition. However, Bob, Wisconsin Elections Commissioner Spindell, this is not exonerating. What you have done is basically what? You pointed to the president and say he directed us to commit this fraud, this conspiracy that we tried to undertake here in the state of Wisconsin. Well, it was at the president's direction. That ain't going to get you off the hook, sir. Although, how do you get the guy off the Wisconsin Elections Commission? I'm not exactly sure. Come back with us, a fine U.S. senatorial candidate. He's an attorney by trade, and he's filed lawsuits on the ballots here in the state of Wisconsin, especially the absentee ballots. We'll tell you all about it. Peter Peckarsky returns to the Devil's Advocate. Stick around. I know you will.
Talk it out, man.
I have never been more excited about anything that I have gotten the chance to work on.
Here we are, the young contender, scrappy, controversial, has an impressive reach. Devil Radio 92.7.
This is Rocker, and I'm sitting here on the patio at Salvatore's Tomato Pies, freezing my butt off. So I'm headed next door to the Dark Horse Art Bar for a Rocker Rye whiskey to warm me up. It's a high rye with just a touch of malted barley. It's yummy. Find Rocker Spirits at Festival Foods on East Wash and Woodman's grocery stores. You must be 21. Please drink responsibly.
Hello, Peter.
Oh,
what
do we have here, Luke?
This is Brian.
Brian, hey, how are you?
Glorious.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
We're making things happen.
How are Luke and our illustrious leader?
Your job listing.
Good. Our illustrious leader is running to relieve himself right now. And hopefully Luke is resting and or napping.
Hey, I'm sorry. I need some more volume here. Hold on, let me
$300 per
find
month.
get
If
some
you're
more
hiring,
volume.
Devil Radio can help. Call today.
Biden and the Senate. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. President Biden says he's not sure his elections
hear me?
and voting rights legislation
I can indeed.
Congress this year.
Okay.
Biden talking with
The
reporters.
picture looks, well, the
key
picture's
fellow
not going to go
Democrats
anywhere. It's just the audio.
of
No,
Arizona
it's just you.
announced her refusal to go along with
You're
changing Senate
your level
rules
for us
to
sounds great.
bypass the Republican filibuster. After meeting
Good
with
to see
Senate
you.
Democrats, Biden pointed out that not only have GOP-controlled legislatures imposed limits on voting, they are revamping state and local election offices to make it easier to bypass
happened to
vote
Bobby?
totals.
It's about election subversion, not just whether or not people get to vote.
Republicans are nearly unanimous in opposing the legislation. Student loan collecting company Navient agrees to cancel $1.7 billion in student loan debt owed by more than 66,000 borrowers and pay another $140 million in penalties for abusive lending practices. The settlement is with attorneys general of 39 states. I'm Tim McGuire.
Deep breaths.
Mai's virtual meditation studio has never been busier.
Imagine not working.
They need a remote assistant to realign their scheduling.
Blank calendar. Sorry, back to your breath.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Make calls, schedule virtual interviews, and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you ever wondered why eyeglasses cost so much? The eyewear industry has been dominated by a single company that's kept prices artificially high.
Yikes.
Warby Parker was created to change that. They design and produce their own eyewear and then sell it directly to you for a fraction of the price. Warby Parker's high-quality glasses start at just $95, including your prescription. Try 5 pairs of frames for free. Go to warbyparker.com to pick your 5 frames to try on at home for free. That's warbyparker.com.
For Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM, I'm Luke Mathers with your headlines. 3 years after the village of Mount Pleasant began asserting eminent domain to acquire properties for the development of Foxconn, the village has finally reached a settlement agreement with the remaining property owners holding out from moving out of the development site. The Wisconsin State Senate held a public hearing yesterday on a proposal that would ban vaccine passports in the state of Wisconsin on the grounds that they discriminate against the unvaccinated. No proposal has been put forward in Wisconsin that would create vaccine passports. The DNR will hold a second public meeting on plans for renewing a permit for a Kewaunee County farm that has been accused of contaminating drinking water in that area after public criticism for plans to renew the permit. The 13th ranked Wisconsin Badgers men's basketball team hosts the 16th ranked Ohio State Buckeyes tonight at the Kohl Center. Tip-off is at 6 p.m. You're listening to Double Radio 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM.
The Devil's Advocates, because freedom.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the 4 o'clock happy hour. It rolls on. A little shout out to all our affiliates. Of course, Devil Radio right here in Madison, WCPT 820 AM listeners in Chicago, KTNF AM 950 in Minneapolis, KGOE 1480 AM 92.7 FM. Out there on the leftist coast, WADR in, I guess that's in Janesville, WAUK, that's in Milwaukee, and the Shaw, of course, in Waukesha. Progressive Voices. Hell, there's lots of ways to listen to us. And we got a fine guest. We welcome him back. He is a U.S. senatorial candidate from the great state of Wisconsin. He's a attorney by trade. I won't hold it against you. Peter Peckarsky, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates.
Good to be here. Thank you very much, Mike. And Happy New Year to you and your crew.
You as well, sir. Glad to see you. Glad everybody's healthy all the way around. But Peter, I wanted to start with the conversation. I know you've been paying attention. I know you're running for a federal seat, but got to talk about the backyard politics. I know you filed a lawsuit and you're paying attention. But Peter, the fraud perpetrated here in the state of Wisconsin, we had 10 false electors. They are all connected on various levels with the Republican Party of the state of Wisconsin. And one of them, Bob Spindell, who is a Wisconsin elections commissioner, who would like to be his own judge and jury on this matter, points towards Donald Trump and said, we didn't do this alone. We were directed to do this by Donald Trump. That's a quote quoted by Patrick Marley today in the Journal Sentinel. Peter, that's an accusation and a confession all in one. Why aren't there charges being leveled, sir? My question.
You would have to ask the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin and the Attorney General of the United States. I'm sorry about that. And perhaps the United States Attorney for the Western District of Wisconsin, the U.S. Attorney in charge of bringing any charges in Madison for what happened in Madison. Sorry about that. I mean,
Oh, that's okay, Peter. I know you're not a prosecutor by trade. I find it troubling, though, and I find it hard to move on beyond the 2020 election because they won't allow us to move on. There's something of a Joe McCarthy-esque investigation going on, being led by Gableman, and it's at the bequest of Republicans. And the gerrymandered Assembly Speaker Robin Vos is directing this investigation. It's happening with taxpayer money, but there's no there, Peter. And it seems quite fascistic to me that they're threatening to throw people in jail, Democrats, if they won't honor private subpoenas, et cetera, et cetera. Peter, again, I'm not asking for your prosecutorial opinion, sir, but all things considered, how should we react to what's happening in our own state?
I think we should insist on the rule of law. This is a government of laws, not of men. We have a constitution. We have statutes, which we should abide by them. And it seems fairly clear that there were violations of those statutes. And to the extent there are, either the Wisconsin Department of Justice or the United States Department of Justice ought to take real swift action to do something about it. On top of that, the Congress of the United States is looking into it. They have the authority and the responsibility to look into this. They're looking into it, apparently making some progress. They're asking people to appear before them. Some of those people are refusing and going to court, but they're investigating it. And I would expect that the Congress, when they find out or get as close to the facts as they can, will legislate as necessary to see that something like this doesn't happen again and to serve as a deterrent. And I would think that if the United States Department of Justice gets into this and the Wisconsin Attorney General get into it, that would also serve it. It will stop the people who are doing this and who have continued to do it from doing it again, and will serve as a deterrent to stop them or anybody else similarly inclined from doing it in the future. I mean, that's I think, where things are going. And in the meantime, as far as people being threatened in improper manners, the courts are there to protect them. And as far as I can tell, so far they have. Apparently there is a deposition which is allowed to be going on, but it's under the supervision of the court. I mean, it may not occur in court, but that judge is on top of it. And the judge made it quite clear that if this gets out of hand, the lawyers for the person being deposed ought to come back. And the court said that the court would put it on the top of their docket. In other words, they're not going to wait. If something goes wrong, if Mr. Gableman or the people who he has working for them step out of line, they're going to find themselves in front of a judge the next morning or perhaps that afternoon, explaining themselves and putting on the line their legal license to practice law. I mean, that is my sense of what's going on here. But
folks, sorry to interrupt, Peter. Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. That is Peter Peckarsky. He is an attorney by trade. He is a U.S. senatorial candidate. He'd like to take the seat currently held by Ron Johnson. And let me ask you about what is going on in the federal level in the U.S. Senate, the seat you'd like to hold. Well, there was a bruncheon of sort. I guess Joe Biden went to the Hill and sat down with the Democratic Senate caucus today, Peter. And Kirsten Sinema, sort of preempting her president, went to the chamber of the Senate today and said, you know what? I can't overturn the filibuster, but I'm all down for the Voting Rights Act. I'm all down for the legislation being proposed, but I'm totally against the means of passage. Obviously, Peter, it's her, it's Joe Manchin, it's perhaps a few more, but it's also 50 Republican senators that don't give a damn about people's voting rights, including U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. So, Peter, where would you stand today if you were in the U.S. Senate, if you held this current Ron Johnson seat? What would your vote be on voting rights? And what do you think the path is forward, sir?
As far as what I would do, I would vote in favor of the people of this country. I would vote to abolish the filibuster in favor of our democracy, and I would vote for the Voting Rights Act. And there's also another bill. I think they've merged two bills together: a John Lewis Voting Rights Act and another Voting Rights Act. They've merged them all together. I would vote to abolish the filibuster and to pass that legislation. That's what I would do. The path forward is pretty difficult. They're going to have to try and work it out. Perhaps the people in states where a Republican senator could help out here and where they're up for election in November could make it quite clear to that senator that if they want a vote from those people in November, they're going to get a vote from that senator right now on the floor of the U.S. Senate to abolish the filibuster and pass this legislation necessary to protect our democracy. And that's a step both to protect our democracy, which I would take and I will take as a United States Senator from Wisconsin. It's necessary. And to the extent people are concerned about what happened on January 6th of last year and the necessity to protect our democracy, passing this legislation is part of that. It's part of protecting our democracy from another occurrence of what happened last January. So I hope that answers your question. I would vote for it, and I intend to vote for it. And the people of this country who have the vote can tell the senators right now who are not going to support it, we're going to vote you out of office.
Well, I'd like to see action in the right direction. I'd like to see my president, Joe Biden, the other day when he went to Atlanta and he gave a speech on voting rights, and he thought he was quite passionate. I thought he was just short of naming names, but it apparently, Peter, was unpersuasive. It didn't have the desired effect. So if we cannot get it done with the current makeup of the U.S. Senate, I'm concerned that the electorate will punish the Democrats for failing to deliver. And of course, we need more good Democrats to actually deliver, Peter. It's something of a quandary. What do you think the electorate will decide?
I think the electorate will decide that this is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people want this done, and the people who support getting it done, for the people of this country, for supporting the democracy we have worked for a very long time, are going to vote the right way, or they're going to be tossed out of office. I think that's what the people will decide. And I think it's necessary. I'm trying to make the case. I make the case at every opportunity, and for the Democratic Party to make the case that the Democratic Party stands up for the people of this country on many different issues, in addition to the ones we're talking about. I mean, I'm bread and butter, kitchen table issues across the board. The Democratic Party is standing up for the people of this country, for the laborers in this country, for the family farmers in this country, across the state of Wisconsin, across the country. That's what I think the Democratic Party has to say and do and act in that manner. And I'm doing what I can to push that forward.
Well, Peter, I certainly wish Team Blue, the left, the Democrats, I wish that we would rise up and we would elect enough people. Ron Johnson is running for office again. And I certainly agree with the sentiment. Let's throw the bums out, especially Ron Johnson. But the people of the state of Wisconsin twice, and I would say surprising fashion, have chosen a guy who's not a centrist. He's fringer. And if he wasn't a fringer, he's gone full Trumpster over a guy like Russ Feingold, who is a very good progressive senator with a good track record. Peter, I'm wondering if the people of the state of Wisconsin are bipolar, or perhaps they've learned lessons. Where do you think they stand currently? Ron Johnson, he's in it, sir. That's no shocker. You want to beat the guy. How do you do so?
The people of Wisconsin, I think, are intelligent. They're smart. They're common sense. They're hardworking. They're honest. And they understand what Ron Johnson is up to. And they understand they have a simple decision to make here. Do they want to reelect Ron Johnson and allow him the ability to use his power as a senator to again take $79 million of the people's money, of our money, and give it to three of his rich campaign contributors, and then take another $19 million and put it in his own bank account? Or they want to get somebody like me in there who doesn't take any money, who is working night and day for the people of the state of Wisconsin, for all of the people of the state of Wisconsin, whether they're Republicans or independents or Democrats or libertarians or Greens, somebody who gets in there working for them instead of working for his campaign contributors and taking that money, which has many uses in the state of Wisconsin, whether it's supporting broadband all over the state. There are a whole lot of uses. I'm not going to get into all of them. You understand it as well as I do. They have a simple decision to make, and I think they're going to make the right decision and retire Senator Johnson and put a solid progressive Democrat in that seat. And I hope I'm doing what I can to be that Democrat and go to work for the people of the state of Wisconsin.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. My fine guest is Peter Peckarsky, live via Zoom. We'll perhaps do town hall style. Hold callers. We'll take a few phone calls in the next segment with Peter at 844-967-2789. Ron Johnson's been out there saying some crazy stuff, Peter, as you well know. And it was not my impression. And I've known Ron Johnson going on 6 or 7 years. I counted last night. I've interviewed the guy more than 25 times. And I felt like I had some sort of insight into this guy. But the guy changed somewhere along the line, Peter. And it was around the election time frame of 2020. And he saw some internal polling, something happened, but he just decided, it's not enough just to be conservative. I got to be a big lie conservative. I got to be a horse pace conservative. I got to have hearings pushing hydroxychloroquine kind of conservative. I mean, he has gone beyond the pale. I don't think he represents any part of Wisconsin, or it's a very small portion. He's not a popular incumbent. Peter, either he's going to win because it's a red wave, or he's going to get beat because the people rise up and say, we don't want more fascist leadership. Okay, Peter, what's it going to be?
I think the people are going to ask themselves, what kind of world do we want to leave to our children and grandchildren? Do we want to leave a world where Ron Johnson can effectively rip off $79 million using his seat in the Senate, instead of making that available for education of the children of the state of Wisconsin? Or do we want to send a hardworking, honest Democrat to fill that seat and work hard for the people of the state of Wisconsin, to get benefits for all of the people of the state of Wisconsin? That's the issue facing them, and I think they're going to vote for the Democrat.
Peter, you keep referencing Ron Johnson, who pushed for a tax cut for designated S corporations. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the other side. Ron came to my Milwaukee studio and bragged about it. Peter Peckarsky, fine U.S. senatorial candidate. We'll go town hall style next.
So, Peter, what's happening?
Yeah. I don't hang it in there. Who
right now?
Oh, this is
feel
Brian.
A little disconnected. For seniors living alone, the isolation can be overwhelming. Connect with an older loved one and have the conversation of a lifetime at StoryCorpsConnect.org/AARP. A message from AARP, StoryCorps, and the Ad Council.
600,000 Wisconsin families are receiving checks to help take care of their kids thanks to the expanded child tax credit passed by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Ron Johnson voted against these checks for Wisconsin families despite voting for a 2017 tax break that put more money into the pockets of millionaires like himself. It's time to vote Ron Johnson out of office. MoveOn.org political action, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising. Poll.moveon.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Spruce up your home with soy candles from Wisco Home Goods. I'm Don, one of the owners of this family-owned Midwestern business in Madison, Wisconsin. Our candles are 100% sustainable and come in a variety of unique blends and scents. Did you know our candle jars are also double old-fashioned glasses? That's right, buy a candle and you get a free cocktail glass. Check out our blog at wiscohomegoods.com/blog for more information. That's wiscohomegoods.com/blog.
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Is it safe?
It's okay to have questions. Now, get the facts. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so that you can make an informed decision when COVID-19 vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hi, folks. This is Kirk Bankstead of the Minocqua Brewing Company, and I'm excited to announce our new beer, AOC IPA. This IPA pays homage to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a champion of the progressive movement. AOC IPA is now available in stores throughout Wisconsin. Check our website, MinocquaBrewingCompany.com, to see which stores in your area are carrying it.
The Devil's Advocates know how to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and we're all out of bubblegum.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. I got a fine guest. He stuck around live via Zoom. He is Peter Peckarsky, an attorney by trade. He is running for a U.S. Senate seat in the great state of Wisconsin, the seat currently held by Ron Johnson. And just one quick note, Peter, you've referenced the fact that he basically passed legislation for the benefit of his donors. And specifically, probably the only legislative achievement of the Trump administration was the Trump tax cuts. And Ron Johnson was the singular Republican holdout. And what he wanted was a sweet deal for designated S corporations, pass-through corps, usually small businesses, but not always. So Ron came on my show in like January of 2018 after Trump signed it. And I asked him, were you in it for the self-enrichment? Because Ron Johnson owned a designated S corporation, and the fact that he held out to get a benefit for his corporation designation, I thought he was in it for the self-enrichment, Peter. But as I've now seen the media reports, perhaps he was doing it for the donor enrichment, because he has two families in the state of Wisconsin, very conservative families, the Uline family and the widow Hendricks, who benefited in one tax year, 2018, to the tune of, I've seen it reported as high as 200 million. Recently, I've seen that more modestly reported as about $80 million. The two family benefited from a single tax break. Thank you, Ron Johnson. And they turned around and they gave Ron 21 million in campaign contributions. Peter, I think that's the story you were referencing, right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Hope I
that's the story, and I think the people of the state of Wisconsin are going to realize that and understand it, and not approve of it at all.
Peter,
it's not the Wisconsin way.
I certainly don't think it is. Peter, we got lots of callers. We're going to do it rapid style, town hall style. So if you got a question for Peter Peckarsky, candidate for the U.S. Senate, call right now at 844-967-2789. We're going to start with Melody from Milwaukee. Melody, say hi to Peter.
Hi, Peter. How are you doing today?
Okay, Melody, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm glad to hear you on this station. Actually, this is my second time listening, and I appreciate the things that you did say. That if you do become senator, that you'll be working for all the people. I personally am a moderate Democrat, but right now, as it stands, I'm an American citizen, because as of right now, as you know, we no longer have a two-party system that's actually working for the people. So one question that I did posed to Ron Johnson for the past 5 years, since 2017, was what was his purpose to Moscow during the 2017 Memorial Day weekend? And I still have no answer for that.
Melody, and I don't mean to correct you, I think it was the 4th of July weekend when Russian Ron, spent the week in Russia. Peter, do you think electorally that's an issue for Ron Johnson? The trip to Russia specifically?
It may be. I'm hearing Melody talk about it. She's concerned about it. I'm concerned about it. We'll see what happens.
844-967-2789. Paul from the Beltline, say hi to Peter Peckarsky.
Hello, Peter.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good.
Good.
I called in I didn't know I was going to be talking to you, but I wanted to thank President Biden for handing out N95 masks at the Boys and Girls Club in Madison today.
Yeah, they got a ton of masks. Paul, thanks for listening. If you weren't hoping to join, I guess we'll let Peter take on. But the U.S. government, at the direction of our president, Joe Biden, they're going to distribute to the American people, I understand, rapid home COVID tests and quality masks Peter, obviously, for this country to move itself forward, we got to overcome this issue of a pandemic. What advice would you have if elected to the U.S. Senate? What would be your advocacy, Peter?
That people ought to be vaccinated. They ought to listen to good medical opinion. They ought to wear masks. Hopefully, by the time I get elected to the Senate, pretty much everybody in this country is going to be vaccinated. To the extent it's not, we're going to have to deal with it. And further, we're going to have to deal with vaccinating, mind-boggling as it may be, everybody in the world, because there's a lot of travel. It does not look like you'll be able to allow this to exist in one portion of the world without going to others. So we're going to have to take care of our country and everybody else, and we've got to do it rapidly.
Now, Peter, I'm sorry to interrupt, sir, and we'll get back to the phone callers at 844-967-2789. Peter, you were supposed to join me in studio a while back, and you unfortunately were diagnosed with COVID. From your own experience, Peter, and I understand you're vaccinated and boosted, but from your own experience, what can you tell a guy like me who's been fortunate enough not to get COVID, and our audience? What would you tell them about your experience with COVID, sir?
I would just say, get vaccinated, get boosted, listen to your doctors. If you think you've got it, get tested right away, get treatment right away. And by all means, listen to what they say. The authorities will tell you how long you're supposed to stay in quarantine, do it. And thereafter, be safe. The N95 masks are being distributed. Get some, wear them, do whatever you can to help stop this and get the country back on its feet where this is, and it looks like endemic rather than pandemic.
Peter, were you at all surprised at the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that vaccine mandates for large or big businesses, those with over 100 employees, they overturned that, although they upheld by a 5-4 mandate for healthcare workers? Seemed like a contradictory ruling, but what was your opinion, sir?
Unfortunately, I got to tell you, I wasn't that surprised, given the makeup of the court. It's not that I agree with their opinion, but I understand why they came down the way they did with large businesses. It's a push that's been going on for a long time to reduce the ability of the government to take action necessary to protect the country. And I can understand why they came down as they did with the health workers. If you want to get into it, we can get into it, but it'd take a long time and some detailed analysis. Sorry, next caller. Look, thank you very much for that.
One quick caller, Dave from Mequon, one conservative for Peter Peckarsky. Dave, say hi and ask your question quickly, sir.
All right, thank you, Crudy. Good evening, Peter.
Hi, Dave.
A question for you. So the question I have for you is, the people that are coming across the border illegally are not, they don't have to be vaccinated whatsoever. If you have that type of situation, would you agree that those individuals should be vaccinated and boosted like every other?
Should we be vaccinating immigrants on the southern border, Peter?
Yes. If they're in our country.
Okay, now tell them your site if they want to support your campaign, Peter. We're almost out of time.
It's Peckarskyforwisconsin.com. Peckarsky, FOR, Wisconsin.com. Really appreciate it. Whatever you can do to help out.
Thank you, Peter Peckarsky. Thank you, former U.S. Attorney James Santelle. Thank you all for listening to the Devil's Advocates. We'll do it again tomorrow, Friday style. Have a great night.
Thanks a lot, Mike. And Brian.
It's over.
It's over. Nothing matters anymore.
Go home.
Wisconsin, you know that Drew Holiday